Welcome everyone to the second in our webinar series at Adam Business School on coming through COVID. We'll be starting in about a minute, but in the meantime, if you want to use the chat function just to say hello, to write your name and your organisation or affiliation, and when you do so, just make sure to set the drop-down menu of the two to all panellists and attendees so everyone can see your message. So if you can get comfortable, and we'll be starting in around a minute's time. Hi everyone, and welcome to the second in our webinar series at Adam Smith Business School on coming through COVID sustainably. I'm absolutely delighted to be hosting the second webinar with Women's Enterprise Scotland today, and thank you to Carrie and everyone else for joining us from Women's Enterprise Scotland. And for those of you that don't know, Women's Enterprise Scotland is a not-for-profit community interest company based in Scotland, and they have a global reach. And what they really do is start from the position of highlighting that women-owned businesses already contribute 8.8 billion to the economy every year, and have created over 230,000 jobs in local communities across Scotland, even though they are just 20% of the business base in Scotland. So, and having that ambition to become the other 80%, WES try and encourage more women and girls to try out business ideas, and through their kind of co-designed initiatives and activities. And I've got to say, since I've come to the University of Glasgow, I've been absolutely blown away and inspired by the work of Women's Enterprise Scotland. So it's an absolute delight that Adam Smith Business School can join together with WES here. Now, before I hand over to Gillian Gordon, who's going to be chairing the fireside chat, just a couple of housekeeping announcements. So you might not be, our panelists aren't able to see you, but we're definitely able to feel you, that you're there. So if you'd like to ask any questions or answers, please use the Q&A function, which you'll find at the bottom of your screens. And what we'll do is we'll note your answer, and we'll turn to the answer when we come to the Q&A after our panel session. And secondly, I'd like to thank you all for joining us. I know that it's a very busy time with schools going back and just trying to reach a sense of normality about work. So hopefully you'll find this hour a kind of respite and space for reflection and inspiration with our fantastic panellists. But without further ado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to Gillian. As I said, Gillian is from Adam Smith Business School, and she is a senior lecturer and director of teaching and learning at the school, with a particular interest in philanthropy and entrepreneurship. And she's going to introduce the panel, then kick us off into our panel session. So thanks very much, Gillian.
Thank you, Kat, and welcome everyone. I'd like to just start by introducing our wonderful panel. So today we have Janet Martin from the Royal Bank of Scotland, and Janet is Director of Commercial Banking there. She's worked at the bank for over 30 years in a number of different roles, but her current role involves leading a team of relationship managers with circa around 350 SME customers. The bank's purpose is very much to champion potential, and a key focus is on advancing female entrepreneurship by helping to tackle some of the barriers to starting and growing a business. So welcome, Janet.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to move on and introduce Dr. Helen Mullen from the Adam Smith Business School. And Helen's research focuses really on small business innovation and growth, particularly with an interest in the creative and digital industries. Helen has a 20-year prior experience, commercial experience, working in digital and creative industries, working with a number of clients, including Nesta, Scottish Enterprise, European Commission, Arts Council England, Creative England, Scottish Government, and various regional development agencies. She's also a member of University of Glasgow's Social and Digital Change Group, and she's involved in programme delivery focusing on digital industries, and is very much involved in our new FinTech or MSc FinTech programme in the school. So welcome, Helen.
Thank you, Gillian. Hello, everyone.
Next, I'd like to introduce you to Carolyn Curry, Chief Executive of Women's Enterprise Scotland, who's had a very extensive career at a senior level in financial services when she achieved industry recognition and awards for her work on new product development. But Carrie is also known internationally as an advocate for women's entrepreneurship and sustainable development goals, and she's a founding member of the UK's Women Enterprise Policy Group and a member of the T20, which is a think tank aligned to the G20 group, and has contributed policy papers to the World Economic Forum in Davos. Carolyn regularly gives evidence to some of the parliamentary committees on entrepreneurship and economic matters as well. So thank you and welcome, Carolyn. And last but not least, I'd like to welcome Wendy Eadie to the panel. Wendy is Managing Director and co-founder of Ecom, which is a 100% female-owned software company, very much pioneers in the field of e-learning and e-assessment, embracing technology to deliver solutions that produce the best results and exceed client expectations. They also seek to create a working environment that supports learning and development of their individuals and good family and community well-being. And this is very much encourages growth and development of the individual. And these are clearly really important factors that make a difference, I think, to support women's careers. So welcome, Wendy, and thank you.
Thank you.
So I'd like to move on now to our first question. And the first question is, we know that COVID-19 has disproportionately impacted women in the economy, but what do you think some of the specific challenges facing women are at this moment? And I'd like to pose that question first of all to Janet, please.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. I'm delighted. Oh, it's actually afternoon. Delighted to be here. Where's that morning gone? Lovely to see everybody. It's a really interesting question, actually, and I guess the response is a mixture of speaking to some of our customers and also our entrepreneurs. And I think there's probably kind of three main challenges that we've seen at the Royal Bank around the female piece when we're speaking to our customers. And I guess one is a pretty gender specific, and many of you might agree with me, but certainly the experience that we've had is a huge amount of that, the care requirements during COVID has fallen onto females. So, you know, that caring for children, caring for parents, whether it's housework, whether it's homeschooling, a lot of that burden has fallen onto women. So actually, when we're looking at some of the women that we're working with in business, they have had to put some of their plans on hold because of that. You know, there's some positives to that. Men have been at home, they're not commuting, so there has been some help. And we do hope that those flexible working patterns that we've now adopted, working from home, will be much more accepted actually after COVID. But there's no doubt there's been a bit of a challenge. One of my colleagues had mentioned and read an article, I think, about how it's transformed us back to 1950s housewives that are, you walk out of your office and everybody's looking at you to go, what's for dinner? And what point, have you had a washing on? So that's one of the ones. I guess the other one that we've seen is you know, the sectors that have been impacted by COVID, you know, whether that's, you know, hospitality, retail, very much sectors where women work, you know, whether it's part-time or not. So those sectors have had that impact on our female workers. So we've seen that as another burden. And I guess that the last one that I've seen and heard about, probably quite interestingly, is where we are looking at women who want to start up business, and really those opportunities to be able to apply and pitch for investment, you know, really have been stood down over the last few months. So it's been quite difficult for people to get funding if they want to do that investment funding. You know, the opportunities to network, make connections have become more rare. But, you know, again, there is good news. A lot of that stuff's moved online. And actually some of the women I've spoken to are actually more comfortable doing an event that's by virtually rather than that walking into a room with people you don't actually know. So actually some women are finding that more interesting. And I know we'll come on to it later on, Gillian, but you know, actually there's some really good pitching and investment events now that have gone on online. Scottish Edge are back up with the round 16 for investment. And the Engage, Invest, Exploit happens in Edinburgh on the 14th of October. And I think that's 50 digital startups that are going to be able to present and pitch for some business. So some challenges there, absolutely, but also really positively, I think there's some some real opportunities, Gillian.
That's great. I think I'd also like to pose that question to Carolyn as well. Carolyn, what do you think some of the specific challenges facing women are just now?
Well, I think Janet's nailed it really in terms of the impacts. I'm sure many people will be aware of the sort of 1950s type regression where we've gone from women who are, you know, having it all, allegedly, but balancing certainly careers and advancements, running their own businesses, to suddenly being absolutely swamped by this double shift of trying to maintain working output, but also picking up a lot of the caring responsibilities, and not just the traditional caring, you know, the sort of childcare stuff that might be a part of your routine anyway. We've seen a big shift from people that you wouldn't generally regard as vulnerable or having a particular health concern that impacts their working ability, but suddenly huge swathes of the population have been impacted in terms of their vulnerability to this virus. So that has caused another added layer in terms of caring commitments and the implications for women. What I would say is in the context of women-owned businesses, as Janet rightly says, there's a very sectoral outlook as to where women work. And this translates often into the sectors where women choose to start up businesses. So in the same way as sectors like retail and hospitality have been impacted by redundancies and very difficult trading conditions, the same has translated for women who run and operate businesses in those sectors. But perhaps the more difficult issue there is just at the time you're seeing your business and your trading income absolutely vanish very, very quickly, you're having to pick up these caring commitments. So you have even less time to deal with the issues that your business is facing. And that has been tremendously difficult. And then in terms of access to the support and resources that you would need, traditionally women tend to have less access to growth resources, often again because of the way our growth support frameworks operate. It's very sectorally driven, and again women often aren't in the sectors that perhaps naturally align to that support. So it is generally more difficult for women to access support. There are certainly quite a number of gendered issues in terms of accessing finance. Generally over the years that has improved, but the pandemic has probably highlighted some of the biggest gaps. So we are seeing women-owned businesses that are unable to access some of the grant packages, for example, often due to the sectors that they work in because of the perceived less value strategically in those sectors. I mean, health and beauty is a great example of that. We don't regard that as one of our strategic sectors in Scotland, but it is a multi-billion-pound industry and it's been really hard hit by COVID. And I think another example would be some of the scale-up growth funds. The UK government released the Futures Fund, for example, and they've just released the diversity data on that. And I think often some of these statistics are quite shocking in this day and age. So there was £236 million disbursed by the UK Futures Fund to scale up companies. Women-owned teams, or majority female teams, received less than 2% of that £236 million, with all male teams receiving 10 times the amount that women teams received. So, there are really heightened gender differences in there. And when we're doing our best to respond in a crisis, to get money out the door very quickly, sometimes gender and equality is one of the big casualties. So it's definitely time to regroup at this point in time and see what we can do about it. And we've just launched an online digital platform, the Women's Business Centre. So www.womensbusinesscentre.com for everybody listening. Thank you very much. But in all seriousness, that is aimed to help women to start and to grow their businesses. And we're very grateful actually to the Royal Bank of Scotland and to Back Her Business, the crowdfunder campaign, who have helped us to get that up and running. And I hope that will make a substantial difference for women that are seeking to really unlock their business aspirations and grab this digital opportunity really and take it forward from here in Scotland.
Thank you, Carolyn, and thank you, Janet. Some really great insights there into some of the challenges that women are facing at the moment. I'd like to move on to my next question. And, if we turn more specifically to women in the digital economy, what are some of the trends that other sectors might learn from, supporting women to come on and up in terms of business and the economy? And I think, first of all, I'll take this question to Wendy, please.
Hi there. So you'd think, as you mentioned, we're a software company that's 100% female owned. So you'd think that we'd have no issue attracting a diverse range of technical people. And I'm told by academics that there are plenty of female computer science students. I just don't see them coming through to the jobs market. And that's kind of backed up with, there was a 2018 European Commission study for women in the digital age. And only 24 out of every 1,000 female graduates have an ICT related subject, of which only 6 go on to work on in the digital sector. So you can see where we're already having a struggle, which is great that the Women's Business Centre is really pushing the agenda here. Because whether we like it or not, and we've mentioned before, the reality is that we are the main caregivers or arrangers or organisers, and we need flexibility to do that. The amount of flexibility I've needed in the last 15 years, is unbelievable, but that has blossomed, that flexibility has blossomed at the new ways of working since COVID's impacted us. So I kind of see that one way or another, COVID has undermined all conventional notions. So I think we have an opportunity here to encourage more participation of women in the tech sector. It's just as long as we don't have to homeschool as well.
That's a definite challenge. I can relate to that. Thank you, Wendy. And I'm going to come to Helen now with that question. Helen, what do you think other sectors might learn from? What are the trends that other sectors might learn from to support women to come on and up in terms of business and the economy?
Thanks, Gillian. I think that I don't think the tech sector as a whole has all the answers. I think that the tech sector in itself has attracted quite a lot of criticism over the years, in terms of accessibility for women bias. Certainly in the game sector, where I've done some work, we've had some issues, quite a lot of negativity around women in some instances in the sector. So I think the tech sector as a whole doesn't have the answers and still has a number of issues. But I think because they've had to respond to some of these issues, but then some of the ways that that's been done can maybe have some learning for some other sectors. And I think also just in terms of the broader range of tech businesses and how they can be supported, some of the initiatives that have been brought in there to support that type of business, irrespective of whether it's women owned or not, but still has relevance, then I think we can learn from that as well. I think certainly in terms of the skills agenda, everyone's talking skills, you know. It's really interesting to hear what Wendy was saying there, because we are having that sort of mixed message going on, and there's been a lot of initiatives, particularly to encourage women into the tech sector in its broadest sense, and some of which have worked really well, whether that's encouraging school kids to, young girls to get into coding, or whether it's to retrain people already in businesses. So I think certainly in terms of as we move forward, there's going to be more of an emphasis across all sectors on upskilling and looking at how the tech sector has done that. Although taking Wendy's caveat about, you know, it might not be working in all aspects, I think there could be some learning there. I think also in terms of how business support is handled, and it's great to see WES initiative. I think that's going to be fantastic support for businesses. But I think certainly in the early days when tech businesses were coming on stream, and how the business support had to change to tailor to recognise the characteristics of those businesses, and how it then shifted to direct that is really interesting. And again, using that as a way to support women in the sector in a more focused and nuanced way, I think could be really relevant. I think another thing is around collaboration. Collaboration is always, again, one of these words that's bounded around, and it is really, really important. And some of the studies I was looking at recently were saying there's going to be even more of a need for small companies to collaborate with larger companies. And I think in the tech sector, that particularly along supply chains has worked really well. So again, for some of our digital tech businesses, the smaller ones, the micro, the freelancers, the under 50s, a lot of the companies that I work with, those collaborations and having access to those collaborations is really important. And that's where, again, those platforms are going to be really relevant in terms of bringing these businesses together. And I think the way recently that the tech sector has mobilised to address some of the downside of COVID, and I accept that there has been some upside as well, but certainly in terms of some of the challenges for companies, tech and non-tech, there has been a really interesting mobilisation of some groups within the tech sector. We have the Scottish Technology Army, which you may have seen, which has been a volunteers group that has come together over 3 months. They've run about 100 projects. They've got about 1,000 volunteers, and they've been deployed in their terms to work with private sector, third sector, a range of organisations to help them with tech-based projects. And that's been a really successful initiative and sort of came out of nowhere, so that's been good. And I think the other one, final one, is which has been running for a while, is called Women in Games, and it's a network of women in games, surprisingly enough, but it's a network that was set up about 10 years ago to support women in the games sector, and that's not just entrepreneurs, but people working in all aspects of games. And really that was set up to address some of those things that we talked about there. So encourage networks, encourage profile and advocacy. So they have a network of ambassadors that go around and spread the word about games and encourage other women to be involved, including school kids as well. And they also facilitate those connections that I was mentioning was really important. So I think that as a model, albeit within the games, it was really interesting in terms of very focused, focus on what the needs of women are, focus on what the tech sector can offer, and then again mobilise those resources to create a structure around that. So I think there's lots of learning, but I don't think it has all the answers, and there's certainly still a few issues to be dealt with in the sector as well, but hopefully some that we can take as we move forward and help, as I say, women in business and more widely as well.
Thank you, Helen. So really strong themes here coming out around the focus on skills, upskilling, collaboration and networking and connections. And I'm going to come to you, Caroline, because you're nodding your head sort of vigorously. Is there sort of any other sort of comments that you want to make around those sort of key themes?
I think I would really agree with the points that Helen was making. I think particularly, you know, the need for collaborations that perhaps haven't happened before, especially I think what's interesting is this greater acknowledged dependency on larger companies to work with smaller companies to have shorter supply chains. That's been a key impact, I think, of COVID. And it does give us an opportunity to do business differently and to set out a much more sustainable agenda. You know, I mean, sustainable in the simplest sense of being able to actually access goods and services that we need in a new way, but also to embed different ethics, different approaches and different values across that supply chain. And, you know, that opens up huge opportunities for flexible, nimble companies in our economy. And it also gives rise, I think, to a whole new opportunity for innovation. So for people starting businesses now, you know, we're talking about digital and how digital can contribute to the economy. Now, we're not all digital experts, I think, as Wendy pointed out, you know, certainly in gender terms there are less coming through, but where we see a huge opportunity is to collaborate with digital experts to take our ambitions forward. So, you know, we did that with our Digital Women's Business Centre. I think Helen has rightly pointed out some of the brilliant initiatives from the digital community to reach out. And certainly the tech army, I know, has powered a lot of good in the initiatives that they've done. One of the businesses we work with has just launched a website thanks to all their help and support that will help families dealing with trauma. So there's a huge power of good coming through these new collaborations. And I think that really that is something we need to harness to our new economy and be clear about how we can unlock digital and show leadership. You know, we don't all have to be engaged with digital to lead a new digital economy forward or to lead a new sustainable economy forward. It is about these collaborations. And I really think there has been a great appetite and a great support showed by the whole community. And that's what we need to capture going forward.
Excellent. Thank you, Carolyn. I think just before we move on to the next question, I want to come back to Wendy. And Wendy, you know, it would be great to hear what your experience has been in terms of collaborative opportunities.
Yeah, I was nodding my head there. One of the things that we recognised very early on in March when we went into lockdown was that things like our business development was going to take an impact. We weren't able to attend events, and we quickly just looked at the network, our supply chain, people that we're already on the peripheral of collaborating with, and actually made a determined effort. So we created this Friends of Ecom, and we all started to do webinars together, you know, combined. And these are not necessarily digital, you know, in the digital sector. There can be in HR or in training and upskilling. They're in, you know, change management, because my goodness, we've went through a lot of change just recently, you know, in the last 5 months. So it was about pulling all those together and creating that kind of Friends of Ecom community. And it's helped me certainly, because otherwise the business would have taken quite an impact and been able to reach other people and communicate our messages out there.
Thank you, Wendy. It's excellent. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question, and I'm going to come to Janet first of all. And I think, thinking more broadly of the more sort of positive fallouts of COVID-19, is that we've seen female students and young women in particular thinking much more creatively about starting their own business. So what kind of support from organisations like financial institutions and other groups work best, Janet?
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's really interesting times, I think, and just talking about, hearing everyone talk about the other sectors. I think what one of my colleagues in the bank had talked about, it's almost like COVID's put us in a bit of a time machine, because it's really accelerated some trends that we were already seeing. And what we now tell our customers is, whether you believe you're a digital company, you are a technology company now, no matter whether that's your proposition, how you deliver it, how you communicate with your customers. So we're really encouraging everybody, you know, you are a digital company, you need to be a digital company, because the acceleration and the relationships and that digital connectivity have become so important, I think, during COVID. So, you know, in terms of the support that we've got, I think there's quite a lot, there's almost overwhelming, and Carrie will probably agree with me here. I think if I was starting off and having a look at this, the kind of support that's out there can be a bit overwhelming. And when we'd gone out to do our initial review, you might have heard Alison Rose, who's our CEO of the bank. We're absolutely delighted to have the first female CEO. She was commissioned by the government to do the Rose Review way back in 2019, and she found 3 main barriers to women starting up their own business. And the first was women are much more likely than men to mention family responsibilities as being a barrier to starting up your own business. The second was access to support and advice. Who can I go to speak to? Where are the mentors? Where are my role models? And that lack of confidence piece came out really strongly. And the other piece that Carrie referred to as well was that access to finance. And you know, I think it was less than 1% of venture capital was actually going to women, you know, to all female teams compared to male teams. So what that kicked off was a huge amount of activity within the bank and the partnerships and the collaboration that we've talked about. And what we've tried to do is a number of things depending on where you are and where you are in terms of your thoughts about starting up a business. And we're trying to get right in at the beginning, Gillian. We're trying to get right into the schools, because when we used to go into schools to do work with schools, you'd say to the kids, what do you want to be? Oh, I'd quite like to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be this. You know, nobody says, I want to set up my own business. So we've created a programme called Dream Bigger that's aimed at 16 to 18-year-old females, women. And we've been working with lots of schools. And what we do, we go in and it's the people that run the programmes, they work with the teachers, and they deliver. These are people who are working with entrepreneurs day in, day out. And it's all about developing the awareness of this as a career option, trying to encourage women and girls, young girls, to think about this as a career option and give them some examples and give them some creativity. So we're doing quite a lot on that piece. So that's us trying to start and get right in at the beginning to whet people's appetite. Then Carrie talked about Back Our Business, which is a hugely important initiative that we've launched in the Royal Bank. And this is the first female-only crowdfunding programme. So essentially, if you want to participate in it, you're allocated a coach that will talk you through exactly how to arrange a crowdfunding. We've got a platform where we've joined up with crowdfunders, so there's a platform there for you to do so. You don't have to give away any equity, so it's a lot of people like that. So a lot of the women like it. And you know, if I got some stats recently on where we've got to with that. We launched that about last September. And we've had 74 female projects that they've crowdfunded for, and they've raised over £360,000 across those 74, which is fantastic. And the banks topped that up and gifted 126,000 on top of that. So a big plug for Back Our Business if you're thinking about crowdfunding. And then we get on to obviously there are other opportunities to do some of that and, you know, get some investment. I've talked about Scottish Edge. And again, we've got another partnership with them. They're based in the same building as us. And this is a competition that identifies and supports Scotland's up and coming high growth entrepreneurial talent and can give you grants of up to 150,000. Now they've just gone into round 16. They've had a record number of people applying, which is fantastic. We're now also measuring how many are from female only or female part, you know, so we've never done that before, but you know, 1 in 5 is female in the last round, and 60% have got a female male piece, and really that's a great competition if somebody's looking for how to start to raise some money. And then I think probably the other thing that we've done, and this is back to the collaboration piece that you've talked about, we're kind of establishing, to get to that confidence piece, how do we get people's confidence up about being brave and taking that step to start your own business? You know, and Carrie talked about the Women's Business Centre that we're doing with WES, which will be a fantastic way of getting some digital support. You know, there's a whole platform there, and I won't steal Carrie's thunder because I know she'll talk a lot about that. But, you know, we've got other partnerships as well. We've worked with Radiant and Brighter in Glasgow. I don't know if anybody knows them, but they are providing support for BME migrants who have come in with education and really promoting that diversity and trying to inspire them to say, well, that might be an option to start your own business as well. In the North East, we're working with Elevator in North East and Tayside. Some of you might have heard about them. And my colleague Karina's now starting to work on the borders with a company called Advancing Eve. So there's a huge amount there in terms of if people want to be able to build a network, get yourself a mentor, get some coaching, find out more about how to access capital, then there is a huge amount of organisations there. And all I can say is It might feel a bit overwhelming, but just start with something, you know, and that's what I would encourage people to do. Pick one thing and start a conversation. And I think you will then hopefully suddenly feel all that support around you to help you get involved. And whether it's, everything's digital, you know, no matter what you want to do, everything you want to start up, there's a digital element to it as well. So hopefully that gives you a flavour. Sorry, I've probably given you huge amounts of information, but I'm happy to take any questions on those individually.
I mean, I think that's excellent, and some really good just examples of the different initiatives that people can engage with, that women can engage with. So thank you for that, Janet. I'm now going to come to Carolyn just to pick up on some of those themes there that we've heard about. So we've heard about, you know, the sort of confidence issue, the family responsibility, the access to support, and in particular the sort of financial element, and how that you know, it is an issue for women entering into business. And it's great to hear some of the things which the bank is doing, and that's fantastic. And I know that obviously, you know, very recently the service which WES has been involved in launching is another sort of step, isn't it, to really supporting women. So I don't know if you maybe just want to pick up some of those themes, Carolyn.
Yeah, so I'll start with confidence, because that is a particular bugbear for me. There is a lot of talk, and there is also a lot of research that says, you know, starting up a business, women do feel perhaps less confident than they might. And there are a lot of good reasons for that. We know that women tend to know less numbers of people in their networks that have started up a business before. They don't have any insight. And also, again, often due to the sectors that they might want to start a business up in, they may not necessarily receive the same reception that somebody would go into one of the startup agencies with, for example, a digital startup proposition. So there are many reasons why women may feel not confident when they're starting up a business. That doesn't necessarily mean that women are not confident. And I think there's a big distinction to be made there. That often this lack of confidence is because of the environment that you are starting up in. You know, it does make a difference if you're going into an environment that is majority male, that is aligned to sectors that you are not operating in. All of that is bound to have an effect on your confidence. So I think it's important to say that. You would be inhuman, I think, not to feel that in some shape or form. So that's a very natural starting point. But the main point is there is now needs-based support that is out there. We've spent years researching the support that we put in place, and we understand the issues that women continually tell us they face. The support that we've set up is designed to address some of those barriers. And there are also other organisations out there that are trying to address some of the issues that women face. So there is more support now, more than ever. Certainly there are issues, but there's also a lot more support coming to the fore that is dealing with specific issues like that. I can see there was a question round about access to investment for women, and access to equity investment is still tricky. That's a reality for women-owned businesses. And again, there are a lot of reasons for that, many of them sectoral driven. If you are sitting there thinking about getting equity investment for your startup, have a good look at the equity group that you might be pitching to. Be very clear what their sectoral appetite is, what are the businesses that they have invested in previously, what are the deals that they have been done. Ask them if they have a genuine appetite for the sector that you are going into, and ask them if they have investors in their syndicate that have experience of the sector that you're going into, because all of these are factors in whether they might be the right investors for you. It's not just about whether you might get the money. You know, this is a long-term relationship that you're starting up, and it's very important to get a good match right from day one. So go in and be equipped with the right questions to understand what the right options are for you. Sometimes a longer path to taking on equity investment works better for women. We know that from a lot of the women-owned businesses we work with. Often a lot of the accelerators or a lot of the the assumed trajectory for ambitious businesses is to take on either debt or equity very early stage and to really catapult your business from that investment. Now that works for some people, but it doesn't work for everybody. And often for women, we find that a longer term path through that works better in terms of what they want to achieve. So I think that is worth seeing.
Thank you. I think I'm just going to pick up one of those issues with Helen very briefly, because Helen, you know, in your experience, particularly in teaching entrepreneurship and in the experiential courses that we do, I don't know if you want to say something a little bit about the sort of confidence point, just building on what Carrie had said and what Janet had said as well there.
Yeah, thanks, Gillian. Yeah, just briefly, I that really resonated with us because as part of the honour students courses that we run, one of them is called Business Startup, and it's very much an experiential course. So when the students come on the course, male and female, they create groups of 4 or 5 students, and then they stay in that for the whole year, and they actually create a business as part of that. And we emphasise to them that it worries a lot of them at the start, but it's really to experience what that is like. And although it sounds very artificial, it does work. And we can see that from the reflective pieces that the students write at the end of that, when they track their journey about what they felt like when they started, and then how they felt at the end. And that confidence aspect comes through in that. And I think that by allowing students, and it's great if we can do that in schools as well, but allowing students to do that at university, they can experience what it is like. And those feelings, whether that's confidence, reassurance, can do, having to speak to people, all of those things in a very safe environment, and then decide whether or not that's something they want to do. And I always say that, you know, although we're talking entrepreneurships, we're talking about enterprise skills. We don't expect everyone to set up their own businesses, but we are trying to encourage the students to have those skills so that no matter what role they go into, they can use those. And one of our students last year did some work with female students in the university in honours, looking at the difference between how they approached entrepreneurship before they did these classes and then after. And what came through was that those classes that had that experiential element really helped the female students with their confidence, because although they thought they might be able to do it, or they were wary of doing it, when they actually did it, they could see that they could do it. And that was maybe, you know, their product wasn't working, they had to pivot to something else, or someone had rejected the product, they had to change, or they had to overcome these issues, and they were so focused on how do we do this, how do we get this done, that they were already problem solving and pivoting and doing their minimal viable products and just being enterprising. And I think that was really, really interesting that has come through, and that I think just speaks to what you're all saying already and reinforces that. Thanks, Gillian.
Thank you, Helen. And I think, you know, from our perspective as academics, it is one of the most fulfilling parts of our job, is being able to see, you know, the impact of providing the opportunities to do and to experiment on our students, and definitely, you know, in terms of self-efficacy and belief and being able to do it, it is for me, it's one of the big wins. Before we move on to Q&A, I just want to come back to Wendy actually. And Wendy, I'd like to ask you, what's the one positive opportunity or possibility that might come out of this current context for women in business in the digital sector or more generally?
I can only really talk about what I'm experiencing within our business, within my business, but working from home and relying on the remote access is accepted as an increasingly viable way to operate normally. And this actually has huge benefits for myself and generally women's ability to participate equally in existing markets. So I've been attempting international trade since about 2014. That's when my youngest started primary school, so I was able to invest the time. But I've never been able to fully commit, really, due to my family commitments. And now with the virtual attendance as the new norm, and it's not on the peripheral of anything, we're operating on the same playing field. It's just changed things. I've got 3 virtual trade missions, 2 large US events, one that we're presenting at, and these are all in the next 6 months. I would never, I didn't have to check any schedules or babysitters or work out shift patterns, or I can just say yes, I'll be there, and I would not have been able to commit the time pre-COVID to invest in the growth of my business like that. So COVID's meant that we're now a truly a borderless business, and all, as I say, all conventional considerations have kind of been removed from there. And I suppose now it's our responsibility to maintain this level of virtual engagement, or even increase it for the future of work, because this will allow the world to function in a clearer, more effective way than in the past, in my experience anyway.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you all for that. That was really just wonderful. I'm now going to move on to the Q&A. And first of all, we're going to come to Wendy Pring, first of all. Wendy, you have a question, I believe, for the panel.
Hi, Wendy. Would you like to ask your question?
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Hi. I just sort of put a couple of things in there I didn't know you were going to ask. Got me on the hop. My question is that there's a lot of, I'm setting up a new business. AI enabled infrastructure is going to be massively important for this. Where I live currently and where I'm planning to stay, I don't plan to move, to access better digital connectivity is actually making this really, really challenging for me at the moment, because it's restricting the opportunities that I can put together because of the inability to get 4G, let alone 5G, and then the rolling out of this. So I just wondered collectively if the group of panelists were doing something to perhaps improve that situation across the whole country, really.
Okay, thank you, Wendy, for that. And I think I'll maybe come to Carolyn first on this. Carolyn, do you have a sort of view on that?
Well, we certainly haven't got it cracked, Wendy, and I think it's an incredibly frustrating problem, actually, because we often have really entrepreneurial people who live in more rural-based areas, and often who are very digital leading or very technology leading, because that's what works for them in their current environment. And yet we aren't able to get the tools to these people in order to really capitalise on those human skills and that ability. And I think that's incredibly frustrating. And what are we doing about it? Well, I can't say that we've got the answer to the connectivity. It is certainly on our lobbying agenda. I would expect the government to be paying closer attention to this, because in a lot of the reports that have come out so far on COVID-19 and on rebooting the economy, digital has been at the centre of a lot of those proposals and recommendations. So I would really hope that that's something that is tackled in the near future. In the meantime, I think it's incumbent upon all of us to really highlight the benefits that digital has and the benefits from connecting up communities. I think we've talked a lot here already today about collaborations that wouldn't normally have happened. And perhaps this is our opportunity to collaborate and try to push forward more of those digital capabilities for people that can't access them, and to try to get some breakthrough there so that we can capitalise on all these skills and innovations that people have got.
I had a little point to that, only because of the kind of solutions that we're putting together, and we can see certainly when we're creating capability academies, for instance, for some organisations who are looking to upskill their workforce, we're actually having to create an offline capability as well as obviously the main frame for being online. And it's a little bit like going back in time and creating this offline version, but it's just become such a necessity, not only for maybe where the locations are, but maybe even from the security aspect of where they're working. So we're having to be very innovative in the way that we're delivering these, and having to take into consideration the connectivity. But unfortunately, it's such a big, I've met some really interesting organisations who are funding or trying to create better connectivity, but that's a much bigger problem than I can have any control over.
Thank you. Janet, I don't know if there's anything that you want to sort of chip in here?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in a similar place to Carrie. It's very much a lobbying. It's on our agenda for lobbying with the government. We've got a Scotland board of the Royal Bank of Scotland, and Malcolm Buchanan, who's our chairman, is certainly something that's on his agenda. So Katie Forbes, as you know, who's within the Scottish Government, actually had that digital piece because she's based in Highlands and Islands, and that's actually her constituency. So she has an absolute vested interest in it. And it's certainly an issue that we've been raising on a number of occasions to see this is something that will restrict our ability to be able to deliver fantastic digital solutions. So it's on everybody's agenda, but as Carrie said, we've absolutely not cracked it. But I just think we just need to continue to do that. And I do agree that actually what's happened with this crisis just emphasises even more why we've got to get this. We really have to do this, because it's awful to hear somebody like Wendy that's not able to progress that business because she's restrained by connectivity issues. So it's incumbent on all of us to take responsibility for it however we can to try and move it forward.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you all for offering some insights there to Wendy. So I'm going to move on to our next question, and I'm going to come to Professor Rosalind Searle. Ros, would you like to ask your question to the panel, please?
Thank you. A very interesting set of talks. I just wanted to kind of link in with what's been done at school level about this, because it seems to me that often it's opportunities for women to come into leadership roles and to be mentored and exposed to this. So can the panel talk about what they do for younger women in seeing this as a viable career option as they go forward, please?
Okay, so I think I'll maybe come to Carolyn first of all.
Okay, it's a great point, I think. And certainly at Women's Enterprise Scotland, we have a number of role model ambassadors, so women who are already running their own businesses. And that is a key initiative for us in order to encourage and inspire younger girls to see women out there who are relatable. Before we ran this initiative, often research would tell us that young girls would point to celebrities as role models. And whilst that's great, it doesn't help what they have achieved as celebrities feel very accessible, you know, to your average 16-year-old. So we have women like Wendy Eadie, who are our ambassadors and who do a terrific job of actually engaging in local communities. And I know a lot of our ambassadors have worked with schools, have gone into schools, but like everything else, there is so much more that we could do. So we hope that the Women's Business Centre, the digital platform that we've just launched, will be another tool that we have in order to help and inspire young women and girls to look at entrepreneurship. And I think collectively, with the work that others do, so from our ambassadors visiting schools and pointing to the digital platform, from the work that Janet's doing with the Bank's Dream Bigger initiative, from the work of an organisation called Young Enterprise Scotland, who do go into schools and run some enterprising competitions, very similar to the pieces that Helen talked about in the work that she's done with her students. The more we can connect up together and build a pipeline from the initiatives that are already running, then the more successful we can be. But there is no doubt that there is a lot more work to be done there.
Thank you, Carolyn. And I think I'll maybe come to Janet as well, just to, if you have a particular perspective on what Rose asked.
Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because you kind of look at the curriculum at the moment that you have in schools, and it's probably not terribly conducive to leading someone down a path that they want to say, I'm going to start my new business. And so I'll come back to Dream Bigger in a moment, but actually even earlier than that, we run in the Royal Bank something called Money Sense. And what we do is that goes right into primary schools. And this is actually about the financial piece. And we've talked before about being really confident with finance. So we start from primary 2, primary 1, and we go in and we work with the teachers and we give the kids a project to do. You know, you've got to organise a birthday party and you've got this much of a budget, and how do you work it out? And we've got that all the way through that goes into secondary school to try and improve the financial capability of everybody. and complement some of the, you know, your maths and your English, but actually try to get people a bit of a business outlook. So that's what probably one of the first things we do. And then the Dream Bigger one, I say, is now our real push to say, what can we do to get people interested? And as you say, not necessarily, I love the comment about it's getting people to think about, to be enterprising that Helen talked about. You know, you don't need to say, I'm definitely going to run my own business, but actually that mindset is incredibly important. And what we do, just to give you a bit of a feel for what the Dream Bigger looks like, because we're doing it digitally just now, because obviously we can't get into school, but I'm going to do a bit of a plug like Carrie did, if that's okay. So we've got sessions on every Tuesday. You can join a session on Introduction to Entrepreneurship. I'm just reading it to make sure I've got this right, and I'm happy to share it. Developing an entrepreneurial mindset. We do that every Wednesday at 11 o'clock. And then every Thursday, developing entrepreneurial purpose. So just now we've got a whole digital piece running for 16 plus women and boys. We think there might be some boys join, and we don't stop them joining. But, you know, it's those sorts of skills that we believe in schools that we need to promote. And it's how we can work with, you know, our partners across the piece, like WES, to promote that, so we can get into as many schools as we can. Because I think to date, not just across Scotland, but the UK, it's still early days. We've probably been into about 300 schools or more. But now we've got that digital piece. It's back to what Wendy says, you know, everything's, you know, you can actually get so much more access. So really delighted to share details of that. But that's what we're trying to do on the school side. Hopefully that gives you a bit of a flavour of what we're trying to do.
Okay, thank you so much, Janet. That's really, really good. I am going to ask one last question, and it's been posed by Tracy McKee. And she would like to ask the panel, what networking opportunities are available for women? Are there any around digital health? And also, what are the skills gaps that women who are looking to upskill should focus on? I think I'll come to, I don't know, maybe Wendy first of all.
I don't know if I'm the best person to come to. A lot of it's because I did spend many years sitting in my office trying to build the business and staring in my four walls, and then and then I suddenly thought, I actually need to be creating a network, and so I literally started from scratch. We're very lucky in that we're Scottish Enterprise high growth company, and I was invited to the Business in the Parliament meeting, and that is where I then ended up getting involved in WES, and then that's, you know, it's taken a couple of years to develop a really strong collaborative network, because I do think it is, Jane, I can't put my finger on it to articulate why, but it's just harder for women. So yeah, I'm just trying to think about digital health. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure from a network point of view, but I would be happy to connect and share how we, you know, I do quite a lot of work within the NHS and the Scottish Government on digital health, but I don't know if that's the right network as such. So, but happy to support. And I think that's what we should all just do, is just help each other, because it's amazing how many people you know or you do know, and start to put that network together.
Thank you, Wendy. And I think lastly, I will now just come to Helen just to find out your views on Tracy's question.
Yeah, I was just trying to think, because there are so many. I think it was, as Caroline was saying earlier, is that one of the things when you come into this space as a small business, whether you're a woman or not, is just that there's so much support, and there are so many networks out there, but sometimes that makes it difficult as well, you know. So I was trying to think about specifics there, but I think I'd certainly start with an organisation like WES. I think that what you want to do is connect into the connectors. So if you know where to go as a starting point, as Wendy's saying, you can go to them and say, where can I go and get this? So if it's healthcare or finance or whatever, where do I go? And I think that's always the best way in, rather than finding the correct way. I think I've been really impressed with what FinTech Scotland have been doing in terms of it's not just, it is focused on financial technology, but they have broadened that out across third sector, healthcare sector, education. There's a really great network, a great ecosystem going on there. And it's worth taking a look at what they're doing, because as part of that, they've got a very nice pie chart that shows you all these different sectors and how they fit around them and where they overlap. And I think in there are various healthcare tech, health tech activities going on as well. But certainly I'll have a look for that as well, and I'd be happy to share that more widely. But there are so many networks. Even I think if you think about it in terms of those that are tech focused, those that are sort of entrepreneurship focused, and those that are women focused, at even a Scottish enterprise or local council level, there are usually women enterprise groups, smaller ones, locally focused, that you can go and connect into as well. And I would always, again, do that as just an initial round, go and try these things and see what works or not. But certainly on the tech side, there is a lot going on. Scotland IS is another organisation as well that is, you know, great for connections and organising events. So that's probably where I'd start. I start with WES, Scotland IS, have a look at fintech, but have a look locally at what business support might be available for women. Because I know even where I stay, there's lots of local groups going on. But happy to share more widely. I can look at that specifically, Gillian.
Thank you, Helen. So some names, WES and Scotland IS there for you, Tracy. So I hope that helps. So now I'm going to pass back over to Kathleen to wrap up. So thank you all to the panel.
Yes, thanks very much to all the panel, to Wendy, to Carrie, to Janet, to Helen, to Gillian, and like all good things, we've got to come to an end, but I think we've got a lot of questions unanswered, but hopefully we've got you kind of fired up and inspired and ready to start that networking. I noticed there was a question just came through from Natalia about how to be confident and not be accused of being bossy. And I guess to kind of take host's privilege there's nothing wrong with being bossy. Who said that was a kind of pejorative thing to do? And I think, you know, as we kind of go forward and we move through COVID, I think kind of owning these kind of behaviours and characteristics is going to really help us get through and help us thrive in this environment. So before I'm aware of time, and before we end, I'd just like to give a kind of quick shout out to the next webinar we have, which will be happening next Wednesday, same time, same place, from 12 o'clock to 1. We'll be partnering with this one with the CIPD, the Chartered Institute for Personal Development, and we have Martin speaking, who's the Executive Director of Glasgow City Council Finance. We have Maria Cairns, who's Managing Director of People from Cooperative Bank. We have Dr. Belbin Oki-Somerville, who's an expert in youth employment and HR. And we also have Leanne Panglia, who is the head of CIPD in Scotland and Northern Ireland. So again, another absolutely fantastic panel is going to be joining us. But in the meantime, I'd like to say thank you to the panelists and chair, and thank you to all of you joining us. And we hope to see you next week. Bye now.